who poses a greater danger to the American fabric? Now, Bill, let's turn to, we talked a little bit about Antifa. I want to talk a little bit more now about Black Lives Matter. It seems to me that that's where your heart is. I mean, you talked about fighting for the civil rights movement. I think when Debbie and I met you and your wife, you were wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. So you're a Black Lives Matter guy. And let me
remind you of one thing, Dinesh. When
Yeah.
you and I had a debate in Ann Arbor,
Yes.
I was wearing a Black Lives Matter T-shirt. That must be 5 or 6 years ago, more than that.
Oh, right. I sorry. I guess I was confusing that when we met in Chicago.
I wear them more than one day. I might have worn it today. But what I remember about that discussion is the first question from the floor was from a woman, and she said, "I'm a Christian and I object to your T-shirt. It says Black Lives Matter." And I said, "You don't think Black Lives matter?" And she said, "No, I think all lives matter." And I said, "I agree with that, and that's what this implies." It would be as if in Germany in 1935 you wore a T-shirt that said Jewish lives matter. It's not more humane to say, "Don't forget German lives matter too." That's assumed. Black lives matter, Jewish lives matter are the lives that are in question. That's why I wore the shirt.
Yeah, and of course I agree that Black Lives Matter, as indeed all lives matter. Now, it has been the case where people have objected to the idea that, say, blue lives matter, which is to say cops' lives matter. And part of what we see in the Black Lives Matter demonstrations is the sort of belief that sort of the cops are bad. Not just this cop or that cop, because let's visit for a moment. The George Floyd trial is going underway. Derek Chauvin is just getting underway now. Let me ask you this. One way to look at what happened was, look, here's a really bad cop, or a couple of bad cops, who did a really bad thing to George Floyd, and those cops need to be held accountable. That's a whole different thing than saying, listen, the cops are racist. And cops here in general would include, of course, Black and Latino cops. In fact, there was a Latino and I believe an Asian in the group involved with George Floyd. So here's what I want to get at. What do you have against the cops? You've got these working class guys who sign up to do a job. They're ethnically a diverse group. They don't make the laws. They're in charge of applying the laws and administering them effectively. Why do you think that they're bad as a group? And do you want to defund the police? And if so, why?
Well, you put a lot of information on me that I never said to you. So
no, I'm asking. I'm only asking. Yeah.
I agree with you that cops typically are working class guys who've been recruited into this institution. That's true. But it's also true that the police, it's not a question of an individual bad apple. It's a bad system that has many, many good apples in it. And that's the way I would think about it. So for example, let's take New Haven, Connecticut. New Haven, Connecticut, the police make massive arrests in a community about 1.5 miles from Yale for drug paraphernalia, for drug possession. They don't make that many arrests at Yale itself, and yet it's known that drug possession and drug use at Yale is as prevalent as drug use 2 miles away. Why is that? Why is it enforced one place and not another place? That's the institutional part. It's not a thing of good apples or bad apples. It's a thing about how the institution functions. So it's well known that the law in its majesty forbids both poor and rich from sleeping under the bridges and begging for coins on the street. Both poor and rich are covered by the majesty of the law. The problem with that is that it's a law made for the rich precisely because it targets some people. That's the situation we live in. So your other question was, do I think we should defund the police? Defund the police is a wonderfully popular slogan that basically says, let's have moral budgeting in a city like Chicago. We have 1/3 of our budget going to the police. And every time you look around, that budget increases. And every time you look around, there's more policing. Why isn't that money? Why isn't some of that money going to community mental health clinics, which were cut, going to the public schools, which were cut? So in Chicago, when Rahm Emanuel was mayor and he closed 50 schools in the Black community and proposed a $95 million police academy at the same moment, that was a recipe for social suicide. That's what I'm against.
Let's come back to Chicago in a minute, but let's start with Yale and New Haven, because it seems to me that what you're saying, and I completely agree with it, by the way, is that the laws don't apply equitably to everybody. You've got powerful institutions that are able to game the system. So you know and I know that the most powerful institution in Hanover, New Hampshire is Dartmouth College. The most powerful institution in New Haven is Yale. So Yale is able to establish a protective cordon and basically say, we'll have some campus policemen just making sure no one gets out of line, but otherwise we're going to let students do whatever they want. I noticed that drinking was pervasive at Dartmouth and protected by the college. Even though there were all kinds of state laws against drinking. So we know this is true. It's true in our society more generally, right? You have people like Nancy Pelosi who say things like, nobody should have a gun, whereas everywhere she goes, there are 10 guys who are massively armed. Nobody should have a wall. She's got a massive wall around her estate. So what I'm getting at is, why is this the fault of the police? What I'm getting at is we're living in a society where people, and I think most of them, in fairness, are on the left side of the aisle, live by a set of rules that are not applicable to everybody else. And we know that, and I agree that inequity, I would like to correct it. I'd like to go take down the wall around Nancy Pelosi's house and say, if walls don't work, let's not have yours. If guns are ineffective, you don't need any protection. But what you seem to be saying is you want protection for yourself, but you don't want the ordinary... No, I don't know.
To me?
No, I'm just talking about
that to me.
No,
You're talking to Nancy.
I'm talking aloud on a broader point. And what I'm trying to say,
but I want a wall. I don't want a wall.
No. The point I'm trying to make is this. You seem to be saying that because Yale allows privileges to its students that do not apply, let's say, to the rest of New Haven, therefore the cops are to blame. And I guess what I'm trying to say is
I didn't say that. No, Dinesh, you misunderstood.
Okay.
What I said is there are good apples and bad apples. I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I think these are working class guys who go to work and this is their job.
Okay.
The problem is the law enforcement system is really a targeted system against some people and in favor of other people. That's all I'm saying. And so I'm not saying that they should go and bust into the Yale dorms and arrest all the kids who are smoking a joint. No, I don't think that. But I think the fact that they've aimed their resources and their energy and their time at this community is in fact a racist system.